Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Powerhouse Bakery. I'm so excited to have you here. We are continuing our journey in the Mediterranean. We have been hanging out in the world of Italy, and I promised you some street food. And anybody know how to pronounce the item that we have, the Baccala? I'm probably not pronouncing it as well as it could. So you Italian ladies, you help me if I mispronounce it. But I'm going to write on the board. I'm going to bring it over and we're going to do the recipe. But it's a beautiful salted cod. We're also going to do pesto. So I'm going to kind of go through my ingredients on the table as we go through the recipes. But you all have notes because through my journey of this, I've kind of found some elements that I love of one and some of the others. So you're getting Suzanne's version. But you can always check out more on the internet. YouTube has so many chefs that like to show off. And of course, the Italian food is really fun. So what we have here is the Baccala Mantecato, and it is the salted cod. Now, in our video work, and if you didn't get to see that video, go to the ThriveWell YouTube channel, and you'll see the beautiful slide deck of all the Italian pictures. And I had so much fun making that slide deck because the pictures were just phenomenal. So the cod is very interesting because, you know, you think this wonderful community lives right by the water, the ocean. You'd always have fresh fish. But really, there's a lot of recipes that use salted fish, which is a way to preserve it. So it's really part of history. They didn't have a good way, perhaps, of preserving it when there was a large group of fish, caught. And so I think this is it. Now, as I kept searching, I did come across the cod, but at first I had to work with pollock. Anybody ever worked with pollock or cod? Yes? Okay, so good. So this is the finished product. And as soon as our Christini clicks off, I'm going to let you sample it. Now, the recipes were mixed. I could not find any recipes that did not include the cream. In our video work, the one that I found didn't include the cream. So I wanted to stay in that vein. And then I couldn't find that darn recipe. So I thought I'm going to stay true to our lower fat version. In this recipe, for 1 pound of cod or pollock, it takes 1 cup of oil and 3/4 of a cup of cream. I'm going to bring my board over and I'm going to write these down for us. So 1 pound of salted fish, 1 cup of olive oil, and cream. Now, I'm not going to put an amount here. I'm just going to put a question mark because one thing that I thought was so cool was in order to get this beautiful texture, it promised that there was not cream in it. And then when I went through and found all these recipes, and in fact, a lot of them had cream. So this one is, this one is still mousse-like. It's cold now, but I promise you, when I ate it last night, and when we get it on our little toasts, it's going to be softer. This has closer to 3/4 of a cup of olive oil. So I'm going to say less than or equal to 1 cup because, me, I had to go a little lower in fat. And I'm going to show you what the fish looks like, but it's so interesting. You can buy it very dry, or you can buy it slightly moist. So this, I'm going to pass this around, is the actual cod. And then the one I used is the pollock. So this is about $10. This is about $3. Big difference, right? And then I'm going to take you to another way to do salted cod with fresh cod, which is about $15 a pound. Right? So much more expensive. But I love this recipe. So this one, I have salted it. I heavily doused it in salt. And when I'm ready for this, I'm going to have Mary rinse it for me. So if you can't find the salted cod, this is a great way to go. Anybody ever do this? Hearts. So in our video work, when I talked about this product, and remember, it was really tough to get it in this texture. Like, that was the trick, is how to get the right texture of this mousse-like fish. And then on my research, I found one Italian lady said that this is the trick. The immersion blender. Has anybody used an immersion blender? Yes? You want to share with me what you do with it?
I make like a soup, and I use that to get it all nice.
Excellent! Well, and you know what's so funny? I've had this for about 3 years. I've never used it because I use my food processor to make the soup. So it's funny, you just get used to certain tools, and you just keep with it. And only when the media tells us that everybody must have a pressure cooker with its fancy new term, what's it called in HEB? It's not a pressure cooker. Right. It had a fancy name, and it's out there on the shelf. Now everybody has one. Me included, and I still haven't figured out how to use it. But the immersion blender is really neat, because this one lady said the best is that it has a tiny little blade. So even when you have a not so big pound of fish, it really works it nicely. So I'm going to turn down my heat, and I'm going to use my immersion blender. And would you mind checking our toasted bread? I think it might be ready. So as I blend this, I'm going to put a little olive oil in. So the descriptions, I think it does too. If you'll just push the that red button so it turns off, and you can put the door back up. Yeah. It says to slowly stream the olive oil in while you're immersion blending, which I thought, well, that's kind of challenging. But right, multi-hands. But of course, I wanted to figure out how to do it. So one in each hand, ready, set, go. And remember, in some of the recipes, it had cream in it. Oops. That's okay. I'll fix it.
Set it down on the bottom.
Exactly. You got to make it go flat. Yes, I love it. I just had to get it there before I turned it on, right? But now you can see it's starting to make it mousse-like, and I'm going to keep adding the oil. Now, when I boiled this, it took 20 minutes, and you're told to add a bay leaf, and of course, it doesn't need salt because you've just rinsed all the salt. You can see how it's starting to blend very nicely. But it's weird for us to have mousse-like fish, right? Everybody's kind of going, do we have to try that? But then I think tuna fish sandwiches. We get tuna out of a can, we grow up with it, and it becomes common for us, and we don't even question it at all. In fact, even kids will eat tuna fish sandwiches. So then I decided it's similar to that, and I was not afraid of it anymore. So if you make sure you boil it for the 20 minutes, you have to vent the lid. So I'm using cast iron. I love this pot. Cast iron, very heavy lid, and I just kind of popped it open a little bit. Now, if we used cream, my guess is it would be a lot more froth, because the instructions say make sure you skim off the foam. I did not see any of that. But it's getting there. Now, I haven't even come close to putting in my full cup of olive oil. But the next thing we add is the extra goodies. So now we've got some garlic. And it calls for 3 cloves. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Cloves are always exactly the same size, right? Just like people. And I'm also going to add in my chopped parsley, which I know I brought. I just have to find chopped parsley. Maybe I left it over there. It calls for half a cup of chopped parsley, so I'm just going to chop some up here, and then I'm going to write you the recipe. So it's really simple. When you boil it, you're going to add a bay leaf. When you rinse it, you can't really taste it to say, oh, did I get all the salt off, because it's raw and it looks really weird. So I think the reality is you're going to salt it at this stage, and taste it and salt it when it's already been cooked. And when I made it last night, which is the one you're going to sample, it actually needed a little more salt. So I I think it rinses off beautifully. So here's my parsley. I'm going to add that in. So I had raw garlic, 3 cloves, write that down, and then between a 1/4 cup and a 1/2 cup of parsley. Now here's where the recipe did not have you add lemon, but I thought it really needed some lemon. So I'm going to do a 1/4, I'm going to eye check for seeds, and then just a little bit of lemon juice. So it's probably because I'm used to my Maui tuna that we always add in lots of good flavors, but it really did give it a nice extra boost. So now I'll finish it. Simple ingredients. When it's boiling with the bay leaves, it sometimes will say 1 or 2. I put in 3 because I love the flavor of bay. Okay, so there we go. I'm gonna use my little, so I'm just gonna clean out that extra. So it is, I would say, not mousse-like because it's a little drier. I just can't bring myself to put the full cup in. But you know, in all fairness, when you put it on your bread, it's kind of like when you have olive oil and herbs and you soak your bread in it. Same idea. It's still gonna have, you know, you're adding oil to your toast. But see, so that turned out really nice, very creamy. So of course I could add a little bit more in to get it to the texture that I want, but it's really quite nice. You could add basil if you didn't want to do parsley. What I love about Italian cooking is they really do use all herbs. I've got basil on the table that we're going to use for our pesto, and in this beautiful plate I also have sage. And so in a minute here we're going to saute or fry the sage along with some of the garlic, and we're going to do that caught in a different way. I'm going to zip over there and grab those toasts, and then I probably will ask Mary to have everybody get a little sample.
What you just mixed up, that goes into that boiling water now?
Nope, it's already all cooked.
It's already done.
Yep, it's already done. So this is my little rosemary bread that we serve at Powerhouse Bakery. So it's got a lot of flavor in it already, and it's just fabulous. And so now I'm just going to put a little bit on each cracker. So this dish is often served at Christmas. So it's a holiday celebration type of meal. And I just think it's so wonderful that we've got lots of flavor. We've got protein. It's minimally processed. And you say, yeah, Suzanne, but it's got all that salt on it. But the good thing is you rinse it off, and the only thing that's added is salt. Versus if we were to get some deli meat and make a crudité, how many ingredients would be in that crudité of salami or roast turkey? You see where I'm going? It's simpler ingredients. And I think that's where I would really have to go to celebrate this dish as being a really healthy one. Now this one's going to be a little bit warmer, so I'm just going to dab it. I know Mary is doing a delivery, and so I might ask Jose just to pass these around with a napkin so you can grab one. So the way this is served is just like this. They put it on a big platter, and they kind of scoop, if you will. Thank you, ma'am. Let me do a couple more. Oh, careful, that's hot. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so everybody can take a couple right off. And let me give you the plates. So that is our done deal.
I have a relative in Massachusetts that makes this. She's actually from Portugal.
Yes?
She makes it every Christmas.
Oh, I love it. So there you go at Christmas. So cool. So cool. While that's getting passed around, I want to just show you one more time. The recipe for the fresh cod says that you salt it and you let it sit only for 20 minutes. So now I'm going to go rinse these really quick, and then we're going to cook them in that skillet. So I have the skillet heating, and I'm going to rinse. First, let me write down the recipe. So with this one, we used a pound of salted fish, olive oil, more or less, cream. I'm going to go ahead and take off. Are we okay with that? But remember, if you're going to use the cream, you can, and you add it into the water that you're boiling, and then they have you add a little bit more at the end. Okay? And so then the other items that I added We added garlic. Oh, here, let me do this different. Remember, we cooked it for 20 minutes. And before that, we soak for anywhere from 4 hours to 1 or 2 days. Right? It varied so much. And the only thing I can tell you is that I did not do it that long. I probably did it 4 hours. And I'm pretty sure it's so long when you're starting with a product that's dry. Anybody say does it taste too salty? No? Be honest, what do you think, what else do you think it might need? Is it not salty enough? Is the flavor bland?
I don't taste the lemon.
Don't taste the lemon? Okay. Taste the garlic. Too harsh? A little too much garlic? Some say never. Well, and that's the thing, guys. It's so, you get to choose based on your family, you know, and so that's what I always love. So 3 cloves of garlic, finely minced. And then olive oil, I already said that at the end, but you got to slowly put it in. Drip in. Okay? And then the lemon juice, of course, to taste. I agree, though. I think it could have had more lemon, right? I love that. It was not in any recipe, but it just sort of talked to me. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears. I showed you that you can buy salted cod, and this was about $10.50, and I think it is supposed to be a pound, so for whatever that's worth. And now what I'm going to do is cook it. So I rinsed it really well. I didn't really even pat it dry too much, but it's pretty dry. These are so beautiful. Cod is a really thick fillet, so when it's cooked right, it just comes apart beautifully. And so let's hope I can cook it right. We're going to start with oil in the pan. Let's see, I think it's hot enough now.
Spell the name of that last dish we just ate?
Yes. Yeah, actually, you guys that are experts, you can call me on the spelling. I think this one has it. Yeah, it should be pretty easy. Baca. Baca. Baccala. Baccala. Now for this next one, I don't really have a name for it, but it is using the salted cod. And in my searching, I just thought this sounded so lovely. So it's going to have the capers, the olives. It's going to have some grilled tomatoes that I just pulled out. I was smelling something and I thought, oh yeah, that's right. They're ready. And they really should have been a little bit softer, but I wanted them to all look about like this. That looks beautiful. So so look, I've got a pretty good amount of oil. That's probably 2 tablespoons, maybe even 3. Really hot skillet. I'm moving it around a little once I set it in because I don't want it to stick. So I'm moving it a little bit to make sure I get good coverage. There we go. I'm just going to let that cook. While that's frying, I'm going to pull my tomatoes off. So this recipe is going to be onion, garlic, roasted tomatoes, sage leaves. I'll write it down for you. I wanted them to get a little dried out like this because it really gives it good texture. So it's already salted, but I did rinse it several times after I let it sit for 20 minutes with the salt on it. Yes, these look beautiful. Okay, see how pretty these look? They're a little bit brown. Yeah, they look gorgeous. Okay, and now I'm going to put in my onion and my sage leaves. Let's see. So see, when I move it around in the skillet, I know it's not going to stick, and that's so important because do we want our fish to have a nice little crispy outside edge? Yes, we love that. This is about 1 medium onion, and then my garlic. It's about another 1.5 cloves. Probably could have done a little more garlic. I'm going to put the tomatoes in at the very end. I'm just about ready to put my sage leaves in that are going to saute. See how, can you see that? You probably can't see as well. See how it's, whenever it's starting to get a little bit more opaque around the edges, I know it's cooking beautifully, but it's not quite ready to flip yet. Okay, here comes my sage leaves. Has anybody ever done sauteed sage? Woo! Drop these babies in. So fish is always a trick to cook. A lot of people tend to overcook fish, and that's why they say it tastes fishy and they don't like it. So I try to make sure, I always teach that fish is beautiful when it's rare. Medium rare is ideal. So see how it's not quite crispy brown on the outside yet? So I'm going to let it stay a little longer. I'm going to give it a little more heat, and I'm going to just work my veggies there. I'm leaving the sage leaves whole in case you don't like them. In several of the recipes, they do the sage leaves just like this, where they get kind of charcoaly, and I'm not a big fan of getting anything black because I know that's not healthy for us. So I didn't do all of it like that, but I think it would be really good. Yes, Roma tomatoes. I added a little bit of salt, and I put rosemary on the bottom. So now I'm going to add in my lemon. So now we've got, doesn't it smell good? Even with our masks, right? Woo, baby, that smells good. So it's getting very close. I have my power. This little cooktop goes from 0 to 12. I have it on 7. So I'm going to do most of the cooking on that first side because that's the side I really want it to be pretty. So that's why I'm not turning them yet. And I want you to see how I'm layering the flavors in. The onion goes in after about 2 to 3 minutes. And then the garlic. We don't really want the garlic to cook a ton, right? It keeps it really flavorful. Don't put your garlic in first. Big mistake. It should be like the third or fourth or even almost last ingredient. And then these beautiful sage leaves, I'm just kind of pressing into the onion in case we don't want to eat the sage. We at least have the flavor that's really infusing. Okay, now I'm ready for my pepper. If you guys got my cookbook, I did a cod Parisian style. Anybody have that Powerhouse Bakery cookbook? No? Some of them you do? Okay, good. So look for that one. It has a lot of butter. Because, of course, that's really characteristic of French cooking. Not so much of Italian, but they do use butter, plenty. Just not in this particular one. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and flip this, even though I didn't get it really pretty, because I don't want it to break apart. Look, it's already starting to break. Rats. I need to get some more copies made, I'm sorry to say, because I'm out. I gave away a bunch of them, and I don't think I have any left. I just sliced them, and I put them in a hot oven for about 20 minutes. Yeah. See how pretty that's going to be? I mean, just in the skillet. Now what's next, I'm going to go ahead and turn this down, because I don't want the fish to get dry. I didn't get it crispy like I wanted, so Ken's 5 SA Live, or Ken's 5 Great Day SA would have fired me because I didn't get the right color. But you guys won't fire me. Here I got the, you remember what this is? Capers! And some olives. So I'm not going to quite put all of them in because really, I think I have not as much fish as I did on my last batch. But see how pretty that is? Let me show you. Not oil. This. The ones we got on our shopping trip. Those exact ones. Yep. Now I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil and finish it off. So a little bit of olive oil at the very end always really adds a little touch to it. That's probably a tablespoon and a half. And I'm going to add some fresh tomato to give it a little juice. So if you've ever had like the Powerhouse Bakery chili, it's another thing that is, I think, really unique about that chili is I add in fresh chopped tomato and fresh cilantro at the very end, and it just gives it such a pop of freshness, a little bit of acid, you know, for that pop of tartness, and I just love it. So a few sliced tomatoes right in there. And I think it's just about ready. Now, in my cookbook, I got lucky. When Ivory was there videoing that for me, my fish turned out nice and crispy, so I loved it. This one is a little soft, but it's not bad. So look how pretty that's turning out. And, you know, if the tomatoes were a little bit less cooked, you could put the lid on and kind of let it sizzle and get all those flavors milled together. But that's a pretty beautiful dish. So I'm going to let this one cool while we make our pesto, and then we'll get to sample this one as well. I think I have. I'll put it on this side. It isn't a name. I just made it up, really. So, but I got, yes, but I will definitely give you the recipe. Like 420 here. Let's do that together over here. We'll review everything we did. You know, I thought about doing the recipes exact. I thought, you know, it's so fun to kind of create it as we go, and then you get to take notes on what you want to do differently, or, you know, like, again, I should have had the skillet probably a little hotter and got it crispy and put the onions in on the side so that we could really make sure we get a crispy edge. If we got judged, I would only get a C because I didn't get crispy. So this is salted cod. We might call it Napoleon. You know me and names, Napoleon. And so once we heated the skillet, we had probably 2 tablespoons of olive oil to hot skillet. And then we added the fish. Should sizzle. And then we had 1/3 of a cup of onion, 2 to 3 minced garlic cloves. Don't get the kind in the jar. Why not? They taste yucky. Use fresh. Some of you guys know one of my past cooks who I love. Charles was a great guy. But he would buy these huge containers of minced garlic, and I just got so upset. Like, I've never used that, and we're not going to start now. And then we had to use it because he bought it. But it's so much better to use fresh. Again, on YouTube, and I was going to do it here, but I'm tight on space, but you want to press the garlic clove down with the back of your knife. Press it down, push it back like this, or pull it forward, and it takes the peel right off of the skin, and then pull it in and mince. What part of the knife do you chop with? Yeah, back. I love it. The blade, dummy. The back section of the blade. Here. Some chefs will do it like this in the front, and they don't sharpen their knife. Somebody else does, because that is dulling their knife really badly. I'd much rather hold this stable and slice here. Keep your wrist neutral, no finger out. Slice like this. Pull it in, slice, pull it in, slice, and you get a much better use of your knife. It stays a lot sharper, and then you use the front when you need to pick something or curve around or use some detail work. If you're going to pull out the avocado from the skin, use the back side and go right around it, and it'll pop right out. So the use of your knife has 3 different distinct spots, but chopping is so good right there. Okay, so garlic cloves, and then we had 3 to 4 sage leaves. What else? And then finishing it off, you're going to cook it for probably 3 minutes. You want it to be medium rare. If it starts to flake, hurry and get it off, because that means it's overcooked, really. It'll still taste okay, but it's so much better when it's still a fillet that stays intact. So medium rare is the trick there. So 3 minutes maximum. And then if you want to, you can finish off with some fresh tomato. You could even do a little bit of lemon. That's definitely, so the Napoleon style is the olives and the capers, right? And the tomato. That really makes it a northern Italian dish. So at the very end, of course, you can do your capers. I did about a tablespoon, and I did olives chopped. Just a rough chop. Don't make them too small. You want to have a nice bite of that saltiness. Olives, probably about I probably did about 1/3 of a cup. What did I miss? And of course, the tomatoes go on the very top. I wanted to put the tomatoes over here because you're going to use Romas, quartered, And you'll do a little bit of salt and herbs. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Olive oil at the end. Oil to finish. So, when we are talking about trying to really cut your fat grams and being so careful, Mediterranean diet, with that pyramid, we're all about making sure that it's healthy ingredients, and olive oil is right in the center. So they're not really cautious about how much olive oil. They first go with flavor. They go with really good quality ingredients in order to get the flavor, and then the skill of the chef to get the flavor using the quality ingredients. The American philosophy is not that. Our American philosophy, usually, not always, is flavor, speed, and cost. You think? Kind of, right? I mean, of course, there's pockets of foodies that don't think that way at all, but for the most part, it's interesting to see how, quite often when we go to another culture, because they don't have such an influence of health and preventative medicine, we just don't think of foods in the same way. I had a client earlier I guess it was last week, and that person ate out all the time, and nobody in the house knew how to cook, and she was in her 50s, mid-50s, and so she was really eating out all the time and had no idea how to really prepare food, so, she was stuck. There's just a process where we get to learn from other cultures and start to really have fun with our food and understand that the principles are quite different when we go to different spots on the globe. So, any questions so far? Yes. I put rosemary at the bottom. You could do fresh thyme leaves. You could do the sage in there. Another recipe that looks so pretty had the sage separately sautéed in a skillet, and they got crispy, and then they put that into the cod dish, and I thought that was really beautiful. But the idea is, I think, getting a nice blend of flavors and colors and textures. So here we've got the beautiful white fish. We've got the bright red and the green. There's the Italian flag, right? It's got a nice little amount of sauce. So we could serve it over some pasta noodles. In a minute, I'm going to rearrange my table so we can make the pesto. And then we could have a side dish of a pesto pasta. We could have the fish on its own with a crostini. Another thing I had on my table that I wanted to just show you briefly, I didn't cook it, but I sure wanted to, polenta. So that beautiful fish dish, now get this, you've got your bright yellow polenta with the white fish, with the capers and the olives and the tomatoes. I mean, the eyes eat first. Ah, right? So fun. And if you've never had polenta, I really want you to try it. Well, typically aside, when I was growing up, we ate it with venison. So I went to this old Italian family. They actually owned a dairy farm in California, and they were like fourth generation, and it was so interesting to go in there and have a venison stew served over polenta. And so it was creamy. It was kind of, it wasn't thin, but it was kind of like oatmeal. And so I've seen it in different textures, and you guys that have some Italian background, share, because you can also buy it in H-E-B as a loaf almost. Yeah, and you could slice it and grill it. So in my mind, that would be the case if you've already made the polenta and you have some leftovers and you want to bring it out and re-cook it. And then you could put it in the skillet and grill it on both sides. If you had a cast iron, you could make the grill marks and make it all pretty. It's going to have a much denser flavor when you go that route, but it's a really wonderful variety of a complex carbohydrate. So, yeah. So the question was, is it an expensive grits? The difference probably is in the texture. It's a little more coarse than grits. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought grits was fairly fine texture. Maybe? I haven't had it enough to be able to know. I can read this. It says, a traditional Italian cornmeal owes its humble roots to northern Italy, where it began as a simple, hearty peasant food. Today, polenta has become a versatile ingredient in Italian cuisine. So it sets the stage for colorful beginning or end. So they show it in a sweet or in a savory style. But really a fun dish. And so, when we run out of ideas of what to make, I feel like maybe we should, have that on our shelf, because it takes 3 minutes to cook. You can cook it and chill the leftovers, and it becomes a wonderful way to add in flavor. Now, some recipes will have you add in olive oil and butter. I would start with one or the other and keep it savory. We tend to want to make things like oatmeal sweet. Even in the morning, you could have polenta and not ever turn on your sweet tooth, because you're going to keep it on the savory side. Add a little bit of a Gruyere cheese, a few, just shreds, and now you've got this wonderful complex carbohydrate that has savory notes rather than sweet notes. So it could be a fun way to go. Okay, so I'm going to move these guys down, and I'm going to make my spot here to do some basil.
Put those like 3 minutes on each side, or 3 minutes total?
You want to do the majority of the cooking on side one. So you could do 3 minutes on one side, one on the other. The risk is you don't want to have to move it. You want the surface to get a nice contact for the crispy, beautiful skin. And also in flipping it, you risk breaking them. So try not to even turn them more, maybe just once. All right, now we get to do some pesto. Has anybody made pesto? Yes? Describe how you do it.
I did it in my little bullet thing because I didn't make a lot, and I actually made cilantro pesto.
Oh,
Cilantro is
fantastic.
I had tons of cilantro. It's good for everybody.
Oh, I love it. So much fun.
Mine had Suzanne and Parmesan.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
can't remember what else was in it. Probably.
Well, and this is, we are, of course, in a gluten-free bakery, as you know. So this is made with cassava. So I pre-cooked this beautiful pasta, and I just dressed it in a very small amount of olive oil. So again, this is a dish that you could eat room temperature. It does not have to be a hot dish. But I love having it kind of leftovers. I'm going to put a little bit of lemon juice in it just to break it apart and make sure that it doesn't have any lumps. Sometimes when pasta sits with the heat off, it gets sticky, but it didn't. This looks really beautiful. I'm going to show you. I thought you might ask. So yes, we'll pass that around. This is a really nice brand, that Jovial. Ah, yes.
This is about the garlic. Is it a no-no, like instead of chopping it to mince it, can I just use my garlic press?
Oh, sure,
I mean, that
sure.
doesn't do anything bad.
No, that's a fair question, because I'm just not used to using a garlic press. When I first was introduced to it, I thought, well, that's kind of a pain to have to get it all out of those little holes, so I never really went back to it.
It has like another part that pushes it out of the hole, so it's lovely.
Oh, well, see, so you have figured out a solution, so that is fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to clear my space a little bit. So, for basil, really important to prep the basil whenever you purchase it. The first thing you want to do is take it out of the bags and trim the edges and put it into some water. So it should be like this. See how there's a little bit of water? Same, I kept one of these out so you could see. This is, of course, how you buy it. And these are so important, but don't leave them in that. Take it out, cut the edges, and then put it back. It'll last so much longer. If I could...
Store it in the fridge or the counter? Like that.
Yeah, good question. It depends on the temperature outside. Sometimes I'll even leave them out and they'll start growing in the water. It's just so crazy that sometimes they do that. But for the most part, the fridge should be okay, especially if you prep them. It's just like fresh flowers. Okay.
Cilantro works well. I just stick it in a cup or a glass of water and stick it in my fridge, and it stays beautiful for like a week.
Yes, so true. And really with basil, when the edges get dark, you really can't hide that. It somehow just changes the flavor. So that's why it's so important to my team that we keep them fresh. Now these little beautiful leaves, I mean, I just love to garnish with those. So I'm going to probably keep a few of those so I can put them on at the very end to just make our plate look pretty. Because the big ones, you know, you don't really want a big bite of that, obviously. So garnishing salads, I always save these little baby ones, and it's so pretty. And it's just a wow flavor when you get to bite into a pretty little leaf of green. Because so often we forget to use fresh herbs. And so when you see a beautiful basil leaf in your salad, it's kind of a wow. I've just given away my secret of the Buddha bowl. Because we put fresh mint, we put, of course, basil and fresh parsley and cilantro in beautiful little bouquets, and it's just such a welcomed fresh bite. Unless, of course, you hate cilantro. We've definitely met our share of people that think cilantro tastes like soap. Yes, I wish I understood that. A genetic thing, for sure. Yeah. Just like beauty. It's a genetic thing. Okay, so this is pretty much a whole bunch, literally. But you know, if I did I bring out my bag?
There's a bag.
Yes, yes. So, thank you. This is about how much you need to make. Don't waste your time with a little bit. You know, I pretty much use a whole one of these right now. And I could even do 2 of them. So, and at Powerhouse, we used to make our own basil all the time. And now that item is off the menu, so we haven't done it for a while. But it's so worth it. Buy it that day, and maybe one day later is when you want to make it. Do you have a
Buy it.
HEB?
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Yep. Just make sure you look at the date on the bag, because sometimes you can get one that's, you know, not as fresh, and if you're not going to make it right away, then you'll want to deselect that one. Okay, so now I've got my mixer. Now look what I've got here. Some pine nuts, which is traditional in pesto, and so about 1.5 tablespoons. But I'm going to also use hemp hearts. Why do you think I like hemp hearts? So loaded with nutrients. So about 1.5 tablespoons. And I know I'm not giving you exacts because I didn't weigh out my leaves. If I was going to make it a really specific, I would do that. And then here's our cheese. Not too much. It's probably about 2 tablespoons. So see, about 2 tablespoons right off the top. So about 1.5 ounces. And now my olive oil. Now I happen to love to put lemon in mine as well. So I'm going to do the olive oil. 1/3 cup. And blender eyes. Yeah, and if you have a smaller food processor, you know, and you're not doing a big batch, of course you can make it in a smaller container. But I really like the way this one works.
And the cheese was Parmesan?
Yes, definitely needs Parmesan cheese. Now I have made it vegan before because there's some really nice powder or, you know, light cheeses that work nicely. So now, and you can kind of even leave it chunky. Doesn't that look pretty? Whenever it's chunky, I just feel like it's more homemade. If you do put the lemon juice in, then it will really keep it bright and pretty. Yeah, you absolutely can. Yep, absolutely can. Sometimes I don't put it in until this stage because I don't want it to get missed, you know, if it falls in. So I kind of just wait till the very end. But that looks so beautiful. I'm going to put it in my bowl. Let's see, I'll do it in this one. So when you've made this before with cilantro, who was that? Somebody made cilantro? Ah, yes. So have you describe how you made it?
It's been a while.
Yeah?
All the cilantro in the mixer and added the ingredients like you
Yeah. The reason.
follow the recipe. I didn't know to do it all.
Well, and the reason I ask is we make a chimichurri, which is, it starts with cilantro, and then you add in parsley, and you may or may not add garlic. And so it's a really wonderful, versatile idea to just chop up your herbs. So see, this is fairly thick. Now I can adjust the texture as I want based on what kind of pasta I'm going to use. So I'm going to add some lemon juice.
All right, add the lemon juice.
Yes. Again, not a lot of Italian recipes have you add lemon juice. They want to keep it more of a stronger olive oil flavor, which is cool. You know, I think there's so many great ways to go about doing it. Okay, and I'm going to add a little more olive oil. And again, I want us to go with the way it looks so that when you're making it at home, and if you want to follow a recipe, you can, but you always want to get an idea of what texture am I going for. So I like it kind of chunky. I want there to be lots of basil in there. If I wanted to dilute it a little bit, I would just take out some of this, put it into a bowl, and I could add red peppers, I could add onion, I could add more olive oil. So that's what I'm going to do here. And then we're going to all get to sample. So now I've added another half a teaspoon or so of olive oil, because some people don't want it to be so heavy. So now I've added the olive oil and I've diluted it. Same idea with the flavors. Now I'm going to add in my garlic. Right. Now you could saute the garlic ahead of time and it would soften the flavors. Usually it's raw. Usually it's put in just raw, and that way you get a really good flavor. But when the pesto is sitting around, it softens the flavors and it just kind of melts together and it becomes even better. Pull out my garlic.
I noticed that you were careful to take the basil leaves off the stem.
Yeah, no stems.
Why not put the stem in there if you're going to use the food processor? Do you think it's too bitter?
I do. I do. And now I might use the stems if I was going to make a stock. But I really only like the leaves. Has just a wonderful flavor. So now I get to show you how to work the beautiful pieces of garlic. So I'm going to press it down. And you see how it lets the skin come off pretty easily. I'm going to pull those off. Now there's some tricks. Putting them in a brown bag and shaking them after you do one little cut. But it really comes off nicely. If the garlic is too green, it won't come off easily. And so that's kind of a, oh darn, it's not a very good garlic. You might go to a different one. These are really nice though. See how it just comes right off? It just slides right off. And then you can salt them at this stage, and it helps get the oils out a little bit. So now I'm going to press them again and chop. Definitely get yourself a nice 8-inch chef's knife. Chef's knife is when there's a 90-degree angle, and so it holds beautifully. It's got a rounded edge. This one is going to be ideal for this kind of use. If you were to have a knife that was flat across here, that's a boning knife, and you can't chop because your knuckles obviously get in the way. If you have one that doesn't have the rounded edge, it doesn't rock, and so it's not nearly as easy. Now some people will prefer that style. It's almost an Asian style of knife, and that's because they chop like this. So again, it ruins your blade if you go in that direction. Some of the really good quality ceramic knives really don't need to be sharpened. You pretty much use it and then you toss it because it can't be sharpened the traditional way. So in that case, I guess it might be worth having that style of non-curved. But next time somebody wants to know what to give you for Christmas or a birthday, ask them for a really good quality 8-inch knife. Okay, so I've chopped that pretty finely. You can kind of see all the little tiny pieces. And again, my style is I have this hand flat, and I'm pushing all the pulp right into the center of the blade, and then I really clean the blade with the fingers going from the top down so I don't ever touch the actual sharp part. So that's about half a teaspoon. I'm going to add that in. So now I can really gear how much garlic I want to put in each of my types of the pesto. So this is going to be my little bit wetter one. So this is going to go really nicely on a pasta. If I want one that's a little bit thicker, like in this one, I can use this for a layered dish like lasagna. I can put it on my fish and layer the fish, and it holds up better. It's going to really infuse flavor very purposefully where I place it, whereas this one's going to really coat the noodles better. So that looks so pretty. I haven't tasted for salt. with our masks on, it makes it kind of tough. So I'm going to just be really conservative, a little pinch. So this is about probably, I'd say 2/3 of a cup. I don't think that's quite a cup full. And 2 pinches. So there's 1 and 2. So if you're not used to pinching, do. Because so often cooking for 4 or 6 or even 8, a 1/4 teaspoon's too much. And a pinch is really good. And it's so hard to describe, but that's how, chefs and home cooks have used descriptions for so many years. So a little pinch. And if you don't already keep your salt in a little bowl like this, it's just so fun to be able to do that. The sea salt or the Himalayan is also really nice in a grinder. And so this one I've got pretty big pieces. And when I grind, comes out really nicely. A little bit bigger taste. When you use your grinder, you don't want to always go the same direction. What do you want to do? Yes, back and forth. So the teeth of the grinder will get all sections. If you go too much in one direction, it gets dull in one spot, and then your grinder doesn't work anymore. And it'll start to get loose. So each direction, and then give it a little tap, and you get all the extra that builds up around the edge. Are we ready to sample? Yes! Okay, so I added a little bit of salt. I added my garlic. This is the parsley, Parmesan cheese, hemp hearts, and pine nuts. So that's a Powerhouse Bakery exclusive recipe. Same thing with this one. I just made it a little bit thinner, which is the one I'm actually going to use on our pasta. So now I have a mother sauce, and now I can really use it in lots of different ways. Yes! Oh my goodness, let's pass them around. Some of the regulars of my class, you want to describe what hemp hearts are? Yeah, they're just like hemp seeds. Some would say these have been dehulled. They look very similar though. So the hemp heart is part of the hemp plant. No relation to CBD oil, although the plants are cousins. The CBD oil comes from a hemp plant that has flowered and has developed this chemical that now we see on street corners put into tinctures. HEB. Well, Costco does too. You'll find them in the bulk section, sometimes in the health food section. The reason I love them is they are powerhouse of protein, of fiber, of essential fats. All the omegas are really well represented. And so in a tablespoon of hemp hearts or hemp seeds, you're just getting so many nutrients. And so it's a really great way to sprinkle on here and there and just use them as much as you can. And when I first tasted hemp seeds, I realized it reminded me of a pine nut. The flavor is so similar. So that's why I wanted to add them into our pesto, because now we're just adding another profile of nutrients. So yeah, great question. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more oil to my noodles. And remember, I've already done a tiny bit of oil, but not much. And I'm probably going to make a second batch because I wanted to make sure I had enough for all of us to get to sample. I did a little bit, and I did a little bit of pesto, just because we don't want the noodles to stick. And these are, gluten-free. Sometimes a little bit tricky to cook. The water will start to get a little cloudy, and when the water's cloudy when you're cooking regular noodles, that's oh darn, you overcooked them. But it's not with gluten-free noodles. Now another thing I love to put in my pesto pasta is some sliced tomatoes and some lemon juice. So I'm going to do that. And I could even put some of the extra fresh parsley, fresh ground pepper, and even some red onion. If I had it out here, that would be another really good one. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my garlic in. So I've used probably 6 garlic cloves total. That's another ½ a teaspoon that I just put in. And I really think this is how the Italian chefs do it. They go by the look, they go by the flavor, of course, and they understand the nuances of the food, so they get it just right just by looking, not necessarily by trusting a recipe. So that's still a little on the thick side, but I think it's going to be really pretty. Oh yeah. Now some fresh sliced tomatoes. And then we get to eat. Whenever I'm scraping with my knife, I always use the back edge. So that way you don't ever ruin your cutting blade. Now this is the same technique that I use for cutting the tomatoes for the fish dish. Cut them down the center so you have a nice flat surface to work on when you're cutting them the second time. If your knife is nice and sharp, it'll go right through it, but you can start it with that top section. So it goes right through. And I like to leave them a little bit on the large side because it makes them just look so pretty and they hold up. The Roma tomato is excellent because it is a really meaty tomato, but you could certainly use a beefsteak too if that's what you had in your garden. Okay, so there's my tomatoes. I'm going to put right in. And we can add a little bit of fresh parsley. So don't be afraid to add in more variety of flavors in your pasta. If it's a pesto pasta, it just loves to have complementary flavors to that pesto. So some of the original ingredients could go in whole. I could put some fresh basil leaves. Remember, I saved those for the garnish. And I'm going to really accent with some other herbs. There we go. And plenty of fresh ground pepper. Now, we could also add red pepper flakes. We could add a little bit of paprika. All of those would just be so beautiful. See how pretty this is looking? My hands are all slippery. Right? Yum. Okay. So now we get to serve. Now, I won't put a lot of pepper on. I'm going to give a couple of turns of salt, but not much. And you know what else I could do? Let's do a little bit of whole pine nuts on the top. Ooh. And we can do our cheese. So to make this a even better rounded out meal, what else might I serve with it? We've got our fish, we've got our pasta. What else do I need on my plate? Anything? Yes, the rosemary bread. A salad. I was thinking maybe some grilled yellow peppers would be really pretty. Yeah. So we always want to think of thirds on our plate. Now what's nice is there's so many colors and flavors. We could probably pull off just using these two dishes. But I love that we have all these little baby leaves that I'm going to pull off right on the top, fold them in, and then some fresh ground pepper, and we'll start serving. There is the finished product. So pretty. Yes, yes. All right. Bon appetit.